Yes, well, kia ora koutou, Jacob Flaherty with Bradley Richardson here on episode 5. Holy crud, fair dinkum, we've hit 5 episodes, Bradley.
I like how you're getting cultural this episode with the greeting.
Yeah, well, a couple of episodes ago I said, konbanwa, tashinoma wa Jacob des.
I thought you
Something around those lines.
It sounds like something you would say.
Well, I know, typical. Well, as we do, we kick it off with sports talk, and a week out from, week away, week preceding the Super Rugby final, Bradley, bloody oath to the Crusaders, but, we still seem to see that, yes, the team deserved to win, but not necessarily the right team deserved to win.
Yeah. Well, the best team won on the day. You've got to give the Crusaders credit. They had an immense season. They played harder teams than what the Lions did. They came into it the better team, and then the better team won in the end.
Although, in terms of Super Rugby as a whole, does that how does that stack up with South Africa? Because obviously, rugby's lacking over there. It's lacking in Australia, and we get to that very shortly. But the game in South Africa, a big loss for the whole South African Rugby Union. Yeah,
it would have been nice to see a team from outside of New Zealand win, because no one really expected it to happen midway through the season. So it would have been good to help keep some interest going into the game throughout the Rugby Championship. Of course, that coming up shortly with Australia, New Zealand and Argentina. It would have been nice to see those teams have a little bit of more momentum going into it, rather than just look like a one-horse race with the All Blacks.
And we get to that because the Western Force are gone from Super Rugby. A big decision by the Australian Rugby Union, which has led to the CEO stepping down from his role playing in the ARU. So, Bradley, a big week for Australian rugby as a whole.
Yeah, it's been a long decision coming. Of course, some people earlier on thought the Rebels were going to go due to them being privately owned, but they worked out a deal with Victorian Rugby, sold them for $1. Not sure they're really worth it, although it might be after the season they just had, which put a little bit of a halt on Rugby Australia's chance of getting rid of them. Of course, they had to resort to the Western Force in the end. Got to be solely put down to money. I think they actually said that. Of course, Melbourne, a much bigger market than what Perth is.
Yeah, it's a shame to see the Western Force go. Obviously, they've been here longer in Super Rugby, of course, than the Rebels, and let's be honest, they get better crowds than them. There's a bigger fan base in Western Australia for rugby than there is in Melbourne, and it's a massive shame to see them go.
Yeah, it's the whole half of Australia now do not have a Super Rugby team. It's just like you get rid of the Highlanders and Crusaders, and Super Rugby's only played in the North Island, New Zealand. Bit of the same scenario there. Interesting to see what happens though, because the Force are looking at taking Rugby Australia to court. They're seeking further action they can take to keep their team alive. Of course, this is a statement, I'll read it to you. It's a statement I wrote down from Rugby W8 saying they're considering all options, including bringing urgent proceedings in the Supreme Court and legal action relating to the circumstances which led it to enter into the allegiance agreement with the ARU.
Well, that's a lot of big words with a lot of syllables, Bradley. I think that's pretty important. That's a pretty big deal for the Australian Rugby Union and the Western Force. Also, another big deal in sports within the last week was Usain Bolt losing out to Justin Gatlin, a long-time rival at the World Champs in London. Yeah, not really the greatest of ends to his career, was it?
You always want to see these great sportsmen go out on a high note. Very few actually do it. Of course, they like to keep going and going till they're pretty shit in the end, let's be honest. It happens all the time. Tiger Woods, big example. He should have cut his losses a long time ago, but for some reason he's still trying to play golf. But that's not who we're talking about. Usain Bolt competed in 2 events at the recent World Athletics Championships. Came third in the first one behind 2 Americans in the 100 metre final. Then he had the 4x100 metre sprint with his country, Jamaica, an event that they hadn't lost in since 2007. They ended up losing that to a Great Britain team, which comes as a bit of a surprise because Great Britain's never really been a team for sprinting.
Yeah, well, a big upset, and I'm kind of an avid fan of a big upset in sport. Absolutely love it, but yeah, pretty crazy to see the Jamaicans go to that, but it's such a shame for a great career, but an amazing career that is by Usain Bolt.
Yeah, you can't take any away from him. Set a world record multiple times. The fastest man this world has ever seen. Not sure if anyone will ever go faster without drugs. Not referring to anyone in particular besides the person who won the 100-metre event, but we'll let that one slide. It was a long time ago.
Well, is the Caribbean close to the Jamaica?
Jamaica's in the Caribbean.
Well, in the CPL, the Caribbean Premier League, see, I'm not the greatest at my geography, such like knowledge, but there is a big guy playing in the CPL, Bradley, the cricket, and Struth Almighty, he is a bit of a tank.
Yeah, well, it's not actually a metaphor. He is quite large, of course. Bowls and bats a little bit. I saw a video of Brendan McCullum hitting the shit out of his deliveries. Doesn't bowl too well. I think he bats pretty big though, bats up the order, hits a few runs and probably gets out because he gets tired and can't run anymore. Yeah,
well, we'll chuck a photo up and have a look at the link in the description of a similar man catching, took a catch at slip at the Cricket World Cup from Bermuda. That was outstanding.
I showed you that the other day and you couldn't believe your eyes.
It was superb.
Edged and taken, what a catch! That's a stunning catch! Sensational catch!
Right, I'm going to take over from Jake for a moment and lead you through the news of the week. Our first topic this week, kind of the biggest one that's happened, and that is the ongoing situation with North Korea. Of North Korea being a democratic country run by the man himself, Kim Jong-un. Looks Asian, that's probably because he is, and it's crack up, his face is quite chubby. But we'll get into the actual news. He's not a very, very nice man. You wouldn't want to sit down and have a cup of tea with him. Of course, recently he's come out and said that he's thinking of bombing Guam or something like that. Of course, that's been building for a while. He's been building stockpiles of nukes, building weapons, intercontinental ones now, so everyone's getting a little bit worried. And with that, Trump, also known as the leader of the free world, come out and said that if North Korea does anything, he's going to retaliate with fire and fury, which probably isn't the wisest thing to say based on the reaction. Of course, the national security establishment has come out afterwards saying that these words should not be taken literally, not by North Korea, South Korea, or anyone really.
It seems to be a common occurrence with President Donald Trump's words that none of it should be taken literally. So, it's a little bit of a contrast to see where we have number 35, JFK, say, his brilliant words in his inaugural speech. You'd never say, hey mate, don't take that literally, it was only a little bit of a joke. You move on, and number 45 is a little bit different, isn't he?
Yeah, well, there's something happened earlier under the presidency of Truman. The head of security came out and said something similar. He ended up getting fired and prosecuted under court.
Yeah, well, obviously Truman decided to push the button, send some nukes and bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I don't know really how to pronounce them correctly, so I sort of took an axe to that and really demolished it. But nonetheless, it just seems to go from worse to worse for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be running again, that's for sure. Come up with some reason why he's not running, but it's because no one will actually vote for him anymore.
Amen it is. Well, scientists are creating something dubbed as the biological fax machine, Bradley.
Yeah, well, I know you probably don't care about this too much, but I do because I'm a big Back to the Future fan. What they've created it's a machine that they're working on that has the ability to transport life. So whether that be a what are they called? I'm not quite sure. Those things that you look through in a microscope. Do you have any idea what they're called?
No.
It's going to come to me at some point. It's going to come firing out. We'll refer to humans at the moment. In the future, it could possibly transport humans to planets around the galaxy, such as Mars, maybe.
Okay. Well, is this one of those things where, like 2012, where we all thought the world was going to end? Is it sort of one of those things that everyone's like, oh yeah, we set in a movie, but yeah.
No, it's on a pretty reputable news website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What one?
The Week.
Sounds good.
You haven't heard of it, have you?
Yeah, no, I haven't.
No,
I haven't.
It's pretty good.
Oh, well, I might have to have a look at it.
Yeah.
Disney has decided to leave the streaming service as well. Big news for the Disney boys and girls, of course, because obviously Walt Disney, he's employed some women after that too.
Yeah, you're not a big Disney fan, are you?
No, not really.
No, very much not a news week for you. Of course, they've decided to, after their deal ends in 2018, they're going to leave the streaming service of Netflix and they're going to create their own Disney branded one. Big moves, but not really going to affect anything because Netflix, they already have deals with Marvel / Disney for those shows, and they won't be going anywhere, and they're trying to keep some of them around, but I guess it's Disney trying to protect themselves after Netflix. They probably decided it beforehand, but Netflix, of course, rumoured to be in billions of dollars in debt. Disney don't really want a piece of that.
Yeah, Netflix sort of in Scheisse Straße almost, and I see what you mean about my multicultural tongue this afternoon on the TSR, I should say, because it's not the TSR. But I see what you're meaning about that. But yeah, Netflix, a lot of money in debt, and that's not very good. What comes with money is corruption, a lot of corruption in Kenya, Bradley, but the Kenyan election has just taken place this week, and Struth Almighty, Bradley Richardson, is all over that like white on rice.
Yeah, well, before we get into it, you're probably wondering why on earth we are going to cover the Kenyan election. It's actually pretty interesting. A lot of shit has happened to it. Even Barack Obama has got involved, so it must be important. Of course, we've got Barack Obama in the front of our cars in the form of bobbleheads.
Yeah, well we do, and he looks after us in our car. But of course, Barack Obama, born in Kenya.
No, his father was.
Oh, sorry, that was what Donald Trump said, and I took it literally.
No, but you're not meant to do that.
Oh, sorry. Well, that's a bit awkward. Anyway, the presidential election, and forgive me if I make a bit of a stuff up with these names, because obviously, you go, Bradley.
Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga were the two main candidates coming into it. Kenyatta of the Jubilee Party, Odinga of probably the easiest Kenyan phrase I'll ever say, the ODM Party. They were the front runners going into it. They were the ones that were battling it out. Of course, Kenyatta was the current president of Kenya. He's actually gone on to win this election, the projected winner. Of course, he got the trailing votes to come in, but they don't really change him much because he's about 10% up over his rival.
Yeah, well, of course, 54.27% projected, and Odinga with 44.74%. So the fourth president of Kenya, with a last name like Kenyatta, I think it's pretty fitting that he is the president of Kenya.
Yeah, quite a good name for that. It's like as if John Kerr's name was John Zealand. It just fits. It just works.
Yeah, amen. Or I suppose that could be with anything, couldn't it? Because Malcolm Australia. But that doesn't really sound very
like
good.
Donald America.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of awkward. But anyway, a lot's riding on this election. And, of course, Kenya, a place that's been troubled, led to riots and violence throughout the country, the election. And, obviously not as well developed as the United States, as we see riots then when Trump gets elected. But, nonetheless, it's a big deal for the Kenyans.
Yeah, well, it's important to note, 2007 election, it went horribly. They had heaps of riots and violence. 1,200 people died from that. It did not go well. Of course, Kenya, things have improved slightly since then. In 2011, though, 2012, actually, they have their elections every 5 years. They had a horrible computer system running their votes. It crashed. Everything went to shit. There's accusations of rigging, and they were trying to do exactly the opposite of that in this election. It didn't really work. Once the results were coming in, Odinga came out and alleged the voting of being rigged and refused to accept what was happening. Of course, this is when Obama got involved, releasing a statement asking for him to accept the results and for everyone just to remain calm in this situation.
Yeah, well, according to humanitarian groups, 24 people have died as a result of this whole thing. This includes horribly the 8-year-old Stephanie Mora, who was hit by a bullet after standing on the balcony of her crumbling tenement. It's just sad to see, but pretty lucky to be in New Zealand, where the land of the long white cloud. I'm getting a little tongue twisted because I'm sort of getting a little bit. The words lost me. It's been a long day, but a little bit ish with my speech. And trying to collate so many languages into sort of 15 minutes of chat.
It's a hell of a mission, isn't it?
It is. Well, I think that's enough bullshit for 1 week. We'll see you next week on the Sunday Roast.